Okay, hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're gonna have to try this again because unfortunately, of course my editing app is not working, so might just have to bear with me while I figure some new things out. Anyways, the topic today that we're gonna be talking about is anti-intellectualism and its effects on the US, but more so just the effects that I've seen it have more so just the effects that I've seen it have in my communities. So I want to start this off with a reminder to think critically throughout all this information as it's running through your mind. And then also, if you don't want to watch this video, but you want to read the information, I will have the article that I wrote linked on Substack, as well as the first edition on Patreon, so you can absolutely go and check those out for free. Most of my information on my writings on Patreon is free if you didn't know that. Now you know. Even a free subscription is, you know, support. It's helpful. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to start this off with an introduction. What is anti-intellectualism? The best explanation and example of anti-intellectualism appears through first researching just intellectualism. Merriam-Webster says intellectualism is devotion to the exercise of intellect or to intellectual pursuits. First, note the direct definition from Merriam-Webster is a credible source considered an authority, but not singularly, for Americans' English, keeping in mind that U.S. English and historical nuance is going to differ slightly from other forms of English across the world. At some point, individuals have labeled MW Dictionary to be out of date, but it is continually recommended for students in English linguistics, and I think that that itself explains it. Okay, so before I get into this next paragraph, I want to say to keep in mind that outreach online is bought and paid for, especially on bigger platforms, but Google takes from the Oxford Languages Dictionary, in which the meaning and use are locked behind a paywall. Oxford Dictionary is considered a more comprehensive dictionary, as it is a historical one, meaning that it includes more than just the modern usage. However, emphasis is on the definition as the exercise of intellect at the expense of emotions. Noting this looks to direct your mind to why nuance is important. Historical context matters, but not singularly or at the expense of understanding words in current time. This seems to be potentially at the efforts of demonizing intellectualism. This will relate forward to references from Fahrenheit 451 and 1984. Furthermore, the way that religion roots itself into the everyday lives of even those who are not religious fanatics aids this. Corinthians 8, 1 and 2. Corinthians 8 verses 1 and 2. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies, and if anyone thinks that he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. Often people take lines from the Bible and remove their context while applying them to a situation that they do not fit. Careful, as context can change their meaning over time, even more so across thousands of years. If this verse is taught with too much emphasis on fearing God, fearing pride, and fearing too much knowledge, which is entirely subjective, it would be misguiding people. The overarching theme is that someone may be lacking true understanding if their knowledge leads to arrogance instead of humility and collaboration. However, when you look at the tab, what does the Bible say about intellectualism? There seems to be a lacking in the level of understanding than if you just looked up that verse. It seems as if the verse was attached to the wrong situation, but that's one of the ways that anti-intellectualism sneaks in. Something to think about attached with the earlier information is the distribution and demographics underneath Christianity. Christianity is the dominant religion in both rural and urban United States. Rural areas have a higher rate of white Christians, while urban areas have more ethnic diversity in Christian populations and more people of non-Christian faith. Part of that is population, but thinking even further forward, rural votes tend to be worth more on average in the electoral system. With that in mind, we're seeking to further question why would rural identity be a contributing factor to anti-intellectualism? Correlation does not always equal causation, but when there is a consistent pattern of interestingly odd behavior, one must start to question if it's a possibility any more than it could ever simply be a coincidence. Spoiler alert, I think it could not simply be a coincidence. Next, I have a quote from Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, that is, "Who knows who might be the target of the well-read man?" In Fahrenheit 451, the line above translates to me easiest to "Everyone should or does fear the well-read man." To an individual with his curated, hyper-real, superficial happiness, it can be easy to be convinced that knowing is what hurts you. You cannot begin to look to understand and demonize abhorrent behavior when you have been taught solely that knowing or trying to know is what hurts, and not that doing bad things is wrong. It seems simple enough, but supposedly not. Those same things begin to happen to our society as we chase dopamine through doom scrolling. Get off the internet feeling worse and less relaxed than when you had decided to take a break. You fight with cognitive dissonance as you ignore the suffering behind a screen. It's easier to devolve into hatred and madness when you sit comfortably away from it all. Eventually, you either crack from the pressure and finally split open from fully developed empathy, or you wither away from not caring and turn into something not entirely human. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Book banning akin to book burning. Now, maybe this is a stretch, but first teaching people that there are bad things to read under the guise of protecting children, while also doing nothing to reform gun laws or protect children from abuse because CPS has failed so many of us, is a surefire way to increase a fear of understanding. And the way that that dismantles a system of education into good and bad instead of simply perspectives is eerie. Then, after increasing the public's fear of education and information, it becomes that much easier for those in power to go about destroying the perspectives that they do not agree with. In fact, it makes their job so easy that they can convince enough of the population to go out and do the dirty work for them. So when they go and ban all these books to protect the children, in truth, they're setting the stage for anti-intellectualism to come in and remove our history. Charisma over facts. Our society also continues to place increasingly less value on facts and true understanding because charisma and emotion are the most easily appealing. This is another factor that seeks to benefit the efforts of anti-intellectualism, which is at its core benefiting the fascist and the rulers with an iron fist. People that try to convince you that the people who have less than you are actually the ones making it harder and not the select few who are hoarding the wealth. It is worth saying that it is not inherently an undesirable thing to be charismatic or enjoy someone who appeals to emotion. In fact, logos, ethos, and pathos are strategies best combined to add appeal to draw others to your perspective. Logos, logic, ethos, credibility, and pathos, emotions. If you appeal solely to logic, you come across as cold and less people will want to try to understand you. If you appeal solely to credibility, then people will think that you only care about status, which is another piece of the puzzle that sometimes builds upon the fear that intellectually driven people are doing that at the expense of emotion. However, it is when we lean into solely appealing to emotions that we lose value on understanding or developing critical thought, or complex logical thought. Same difference, but you can appeal to emotion while also appealing to intellect and vice versa. In fact, they're better together. When you rope in, and then you rope in credibility by providing sources, proof of research, time and study, etc. Typically, having multiple from various places is better, but remembering quality over quantity. When combining these, you build on trust, empathy, and logical support to strengthen your cause. There tends to be a trend with a decrease in logic used in arguments and debates because people have been brought up to fear knowledge. No one is immune to propaganda, of course, but you should pay attention to the tactics that people use in convincing you of their beliefs. Not all of it comes from a place of true caring or concern. There will be an example down below for you to read and develop your individual thought on. View the usage of persuasion and propaganda as the manipulation tactic that it is. True understanding acts as a pillar against totalitarianism. No time to think. Not only all of that, but when do people have time to think, let alone breathe, when they must work 80 hours a week to survive? Our grandparents and great-grandparents, if you won the birth lottery and are white and white passing, Italians and Irish only recently added to that list, bought houses for ridiculously cheap. Many of our families consider unique circumstances added to suffering if they or you are Irish, suffered harshly through the 2008 housing crash. Some of us were only a few years old or not even born at the time to know this. People worried that they would go to school and come home and their fathers would be. They bailed out the banks and allowed the rest of us to suffer, but they don't want you to know all that, so don't think too much. Just go to work, live the American dream, but only if you're white, and if your parents built enough generational wealth before the pandemic. If we have food constantly, we're lucky, but the earth gives us everything we need, so why do we play this charade of manufactured scarcity? Don't think, don't think, don't think. No villagers, no village. Another large factor is that we lack community in a significant way. We all drive in our own little cars to a job where we likely don't interact with our coworkers more than is strictly professional. Maybe stop by a fast food place on the way home if you have money and little energy to cook, but you probably don't know or care about the people behind the drive-through window. To go home to a family that we may or may not have energy to emotionally interact with, which then stunts their growth and emotional capabilities, only compounding the issue for future generations. We want the village, but so many people are not willing to be villagers. Everyone expects things to come free from the kindness of your heart, but everything we have is something worked for. Even if you grow your own food, you tilled the soil, watered the plants on dry days, and so much more. If someone would not be willing to trade their time or their help to cook, why are they expecting to take part in it? We can give without expectation as much as possible, but it cannot come to the detriment of ourselves. When you give and never receive, then your cup is empty the next time someone asks for a sip. The characteristic of altruism needs to be continually instilled into all of us, not just some. What can we do to combat this? Fight for what you believe is right. Petition for better public transportation and use it unless necessary. If you show effort and interest and practice is better for the environment, they're more likely to stick. With better public transportation, we can also have more walkable cities where everything important is within a single community, all communities, hopefully, meaning individuals can bike on days when they do not want or need the bus. Health would improve, which would make the strain on both individuals and medical practices lighter, making it more attainable to have free healthcare. Share everything, information, kindness, everything. We can build the communities we dream of if we start a little at a time. Educate yourself and strive to be informed in all things. Even when you don't like the things you're learning about, find your favorite way to digest the information. I get it, our generation's attention span is cooked, so start by watching longer YouTube videos in the background while you work on other tasks. Learn things while you are doing something to connect it to a time for mindfulness. If you like reading, that is typically the best way to go, as you're more likely to retain information read from a book than from a screen. The irony is not lost on me that I post my essays online, but whichever way you like to learn, do it that way. Enjoyment and contentedness are inherently forms of protest in an age that aims to confuse and numb the masses. Anarchy, not without rules, without rulers. Share and barter within our communities to create a system, a village that thrives because people will have energy for different things on different days, and we can all work around each other's strengths and weaknesses. Bring back community and value in altruism. That is the end of this reading. I will say I am going to have to reformat all my sources because the way that they are written in this article is directly underneath the section that they pertain to. So there are a lot of source one, but it's source one for that paragraph. So I will label them differently down below, as well as the article to read if I think I already said that, but I'm going to say it again just in case. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!